Folks, today we are live and talking about personal brand for product designers. This is my I'm just posting the official channel, and you can just go to this one on YouTube and find the link to the live because there's a presentation. You may want to watch it. Today we're going to talk about personal brand for designers. What does it mean to have a personal brand? How can you build one? Why would you want to build one? What benefit does it have? And we're also going to talk about what are some tactics you can use. How do you think strategically about brand? We talk about brands, values, core values, and a brand story. What does it mean in a human context to even talk about these things? So this is what we're going to discuss today. So don't forget to join on Instagram. Sorry, on YouTube. You can just search for that and join the latest live YouTube video. So let's get started on personal brand for designers. So why do we need a personal brand? I'm going to switch this to another view so you folks can see it as well, but I would highly encourage to join on YouTube itself. Hey Rohan, what's up? Nice to see you on live. So why do you need a personal brand? This is a whole feedback loop that I wanted to talk about. This is why the biggest reason you need a personal brand. It starts with you talking about your work. What work are you doing? It could be a small project, a small insight that you got, which leads to visibility. People know in the in the community, in the design community, or the industry at large that this is what you're working on, which then leads to growth in network. When people discover what you're talking about, they may find it interesting, they may find it intriguing, and that is what leads to growth in network. And if any of you have heard that sentence that network is net worth, then you would know that why that is important, because this increases something called event flow. Then that's a term I personally use. I don't remember where I picked it up, but what that means is when you know more people, more opportunities, more ideas, more collaborations, just generally more information and events flow towards you, which leads to better luck. That's maybe a better study of mathematics and generally of life some other time. But there's a book, if you're interested in talking about that, there is a book called The Zurich Axioms, and there's a book called Fooled by Randomness by Nicholas Taleb that you could check out. So this event flow leads to you picking up better opportunities, you having a better choice in terms of what kind of projects you want to pick up, if you're a freelancer, or what kind of brand and influence you want to build. That is where building brand really helps a lot, because if you see tons of designers working on amazing projects and these amazing collaborations, and you're like, how do I get to participate in those projects? How do I get to become part of those teams? And ask yourself, like, there are people building those teams, but how do they know that you are interested in this, right? How do they figure that bit out? So this is where it becomes even more important, right? To sort of understand that bit. And what that leads to is, finally, when you get these projects, etc., it leads to you getting credibility, right? And credibility then again leads to you getting more such projects, more such work. And finally, like, then the more work you have, the more you get to talk about your work as well. So this is a personal brand feedback loop, where personal brand is based out of, at least for designers and working professionals, right? It could be for a comedian. If you think about it, it's not very different, right? Let's look at it in terms of comedian. Like, you put out your work, right? You talk about that I'm doing comedy, you go to open mics, then you record those open mics, and then you put it out there on YouTube and Instagram. That gives you visibility. Then more people go like, oh, this guy is funny, this girl is funny, which leads to more people inviting you, which leads to even more people inviting you, which leads to you building a brand and credibility. And then you get more work, and the entire work you got, then you document that and talk about that as well, right? So this personal brand feedback loop works almost for all kind of professionals, but specifically customized for designers. Now, this is why you should work on a personal brand, but the heart and soul of this loop, the buck starts with you. And it starts with talking about your work. If you're not talking about your work, I have no clue what you're up to, what you do. What's up, Puneet Chawla, Saloni, and Ritesh? I see you guys joining in. Thank you for joining in. And talking about your work is really, really important, right? Really critical. And that's where most of us suffer. How do you talk about your work? What part do you even talk about? Because after you've been working on a given project, you're saturated, you know ins and outs of it. It doesn't feel like something worth sharing. So that's what we're going to touch upon a little bit of how can you do that better. And one of the critical things you have to do to talk about your work is to document your work, right? Constant documentation. Most people talk about, oh, I'm going to finish my project and then I will go to documentation and documentation. That's the worst way to do documentation. Documentation is not the last step in your process. It's a constant step at every stage in your process. You want to be documenting every decision, every thought process. We're going to talk about how you can make some of these notes as well. Right. So now let's go back to, we understand why you should have a personal brand, and your work is going to be the heart and soul of your personal brand. But what is brand in this context, right? We know from like traditional ideas and from design that brand is a promise and brand is a story, right? That you tell. Brand is promise in terms of when I buy Cadbury chocolate or Hershey's chocolate, I know the difference of taste. It's a promise, right? And the way it's been embedded is my story and the story they've been telling. It's a mixture of both of our stories, right? And that is what we're going to talk about, how to talk about the first part, which is promise. How do you promise? How do you make a brand which promises something when it comes to personal brand? Well, the biggest thing I want to say is show, don't tell, because we all are designers. We can show prototypes, we can show videos. If you're a UX researcher, you can show customer interviews, you can show the feedback and testimonials you've gotten afterwards. And there's tons you can do, but the impact of showing is more important when you comes to building personal brands for designers. Imagine a comedian comes on YouTube and goes like, oh, we did this, stand up and it was amazing and the crowd was amazing and I cracked this joke and this is how they laugh. You're not interested in that meta story. You want to see what happened there. You want to see the actual action. That is why you want to show and not just tell, right? And social media is one of the biggest ways to do that, right? To build that personal brand and to deliver this promise and to build this brand of promise around that, right? So one of the first things you want to do is join conversations that are relevant to you, because when you're new on Twitter, and this is especially true for Twitter and Instagram, when you're new there, you won't have ample following to start a conversation on your own, but there are tons of people having conversation, the kind of conversations you wish you had, and you can join in, right? And then finally, when you have some basic pointers, right, you want to start conversations, right? That's when you can start conversation. You can ask more questions. You can ask follow-up questions when somebody tweets out something or somebody posts something. And that's how people start noticing you, people start noticing your name, right? And that is how, and with specific kind of questions. And then finally, what we spoke about, there is no substitute to this. You share your work, right? You keep constantly keep sharing the work and in progress work. And let's say there's some weeks you have no progress to share because it's just not shareable. You can amplify other people's work, the kind of work that you wish you did or the kind of work you wish was amplified. So again, people know you, that whenever a post comes from this person or whenever a conversation or interaction comes from this person, this is the kind of quality it will have, right? And always, again, like when you're talking about visuals and you're talking about showcasing, always under promise and over deliver, which means I am hoping, personally speaking, that you are more interesting and valuable in person than you are just in one video or one conversation online or one of your posts. And that is one of the things we struggle with as well. When you're making a single case study, when you're making a single video, often we try to put everything about a personality into that one post, into that one video. It need not do that, right? You want to sell one and one thing only. Think about iPhone, all those banners iPhone people make, like Apple makes big banners and just has a photograph and it just says short on iPhone. It doesn't talk about RAM. It doesn't talk about features. It doesn't talk about A13. There's only one topic. It's not trying to cram everything about it. It knows that there's one thing valuable to you, and this is how I sell it. That's how you want to look at all of these individual interactions. You're not trying to showcase everything at once. You're only trying to highlight one point at a time, right? And personal brand, therefore, is not about having a consistent logo, right? Or a single bio throughout the platforms. It's not even about posting the same goddamn case study everywhere, right? I made a case study. This is where I posted, that is where I posted. It's about consistency of sharing value. That is now coming, looping back, the show and tell part. What can I learn from your post? When you share a case study, what am I gonna learn from it? When you share an Instagram post, what can I learn from your mistakes, from your learnings, from your success, from your failures? That's what's valuable for the other side, whether I'm a designer or I'm your future client or I'm your future boss or whoever I am, right? Or maybe I'm your future student who's going to join your designer course after 10 years of you being a designer. But in all of those cases, right, I am going to look for value, what I can find in your content. And that's how you want to approach show, don't tell principle. This is what we learned. There is, and this is the proof of that, or this is how it functions, right? Now talking about another question that comes to personal branding and social media is, 80-20 rule. Like, how many places do I be available on? Should I be on Dribbble, Behance, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter? Like, how many social networks am I going to be present on? Here, I personally, would suggest you to follow 80-20 rule. Pick 2 places that work great for you. Let's say you're a visual designer or a motion designer, and Dribbble really works amazing for you. Then you stick to Dribbble, you stick to, let's say, YouTube, and rest of the place, you just, 80% of your effort goes there, and rest 20% effort goes in rest of the networks, right? And that's where you draw conversation, and that's where your crowd comes. So you can always split this in 80-20 things, right? Now, we often talk about brand when it comes, when it comes to brand. All of us designers love talking about these keywords: core values, brand promise. What is my mission statement? Mission statement, mission statement. What does it mean to have a mission statement or core values or brand promise when it comes to individual human beings? Because I don't know about you, but every single year I go through a crisis, and every single thing that I'm aiming for, all my goals evolve, I change as a person, and it's constantly happening. So how can you promise something like Cadbury is all about good chocolates and forever, Coke is about happiness, but how can you have a consistent brand or core values? And this is what I talk about, that when it comes to human beings, we are all about change and evolution. I mean, startups pivot, right? They change their direction. So should you, right? Never be afraid to change and evolve that brand. Never be afraid to change that story. In fact, when it comes to human beings, the story we talk about is the journey, right? That is your journey, right? But here's an important nuance as well. It's not about me, I did this, I did that, right? When it comes to your story, what we're going to look at is this sort of perspective, that the story, when I'm talking about personal brand, is not this is me, this is what I did. Of course, it's written in that language, but even there, you want to talk about what can I do for you? That when I was starting my design career, this is what I was able to deliver to these brands and to these clients. When I was 3 years into my career, and I was getting a little senior, this is the kind of value I delivered. And when I kept growing in my career, this is how I pivoted, and this is how I delivered value in different scenarios. So this is what is extremely important when you're talking about personal brand, that when you talk about your story, you want to constantly highlight the constant evolution and change in terms of how did you change the kind of value, the scale of value you deliver. Maybe the first startup and app you worked for was limited to 100 users, to 1,000 users, maybe to 1 lakh users. But the next app and startup and the company you worked with impacts, lakhs of people, crores of people. So that is the kind of things you want to talk about as well. And that's how you measure your personal growth as well. What is the impact that you can have? So this is what you want to highlight in your personal story, of how the value that you give out to the companies changes, right? And this is to summarize what we spoke about so far. Document your work, share your work in a way that provides value. You can join and start conversations, again, to provide value. Tell people what you can do for them. Evolve, try to try different things, and you should have consistent personal value and not just a consistent logo. Under promise and over deliver. And now we're going to take some examples of how can you let's say talk about some personal brands that I personally have always admired, and maybe we can take a look at what we can learn from them. So I'm quickly gonna switch to Firefox. All right, here we are. So first one obviously is Pablo Stanley, who hasn't heard about him, right? And you can recognize his brand not only visually, but in the kind of light-hearted stuff he's always interested in. One of his posts that really highlight his brand as such, I think, is his latest post on receiving criticism, where when he released free tools, there were a couple of things he did which people in the community were gave him feedback around, and this is how he received it. And it goes right on brand, not only in terms of visual, but also in terms of the kind of content he talks about. And then he has a YouTube channel where he sketches, sketches together, and like you can constantly see not only the brand is visually emerging, but in terms of value it provides, it's also emerging. Another one I want to talk about is Don Norman, of course, one of the legends in design. And this one I really wanted to highlight because I really wanted to highlight, like, any of us would spend a little more time to try to fix that typography, try to fix that layout, but that is not what it's about. It's about delivering value. The moment I look at this, I know from his first few paragraphs, university professor, keynote speaker, books and columns, there's books, essays. So I have an idea that he's sort of from an academic background. And then I can read more titles and I can understand where he comes from. And if I have no clue about who Don Norman is, this one website is enough for me to get their idea. And his tone is consistent, when he tweets, or whether he's here, or whether he's writing an essay or writing a book. It's a very consistent tone and language as well. And then I want to talk about Erica Hall, Mule Girl, she's known as, and she is part of something called Mule Design, and which is an agency. And again, like, you should follow her on Twitter if you don't already. She is there on Medium as well. What I like about her personal brand is it's always about talking about nuances which other people are not willing to talk about. And that is how I remember Mule Girl always. This one is, again, a character designer, Elisa Chang. I don't remember how I discovered her, but not again, this one talks about the consistency of style, right? You can find, and then you can find the consistency of her messaging across the platform as well. On Twitter as well, she's talking about the same. However, you will notice this is her latest post on Instagram, but this is not the same post on Twitter. On Twitter, she's sharing work in progress, other things that are happening, that may go in Instagram story. So again, it's not about posting the same goddamn content everywhere. It's about knowing what is valuable to your audience. Why do people follow you? And what are they looking for? Inspiration? Are they looking for something else? You got to know that about your audience. And another one that I wanted to quickly talk about is, of course, Gulsheed, like one person I've been following since forever. And like everywhere you go, he has a tutorial, he has a certain style of illustration and of doing digital art. And wherever you find him, from Dribbble to his own website to whether you want to find him on Instagram or YouTube, you're going to find a very consistent brand. And in terms of delivering the kind of value, you always know you can learn a technique, a new style, or how to reinterpret certain scene in his style in every single thing that he does. So that is what delivering consistent value for over a decade looks like. This is Elisa Chang's Twitter. I think I wanted to show this earlier. Like, this is very different on how she's talking about her work here versus on everywhere else. This is her store, and this is Mule Design Agency that we spoke about. Erica Hall again, and this is Brad Frost. If you've heard about Atomic Design, we can, like, this is what it looks like. Like, this guy is same. This is visual consistency, but his messaging is consistent throughout the platform as well. He's always talking about evolving these conversations. And there are tons of other examples from non-design fields as well that at the moment, I think I'll probably do another live where we can cover even more examples, and the examples you folks have and want to share. I'll be coming to some awesome question that I see in the chat just in a moment, once we have covered, this basics that last couple of points I wanted to cover, which is a bunch of tactical ideas. And tactical ideas, like, I'm not a big fan of sharing tactical ideas, but this one was important. Let's say you have project notes or you have Loom videos. Imagine you just walk through design, create a Loom video. These days you're on a remote work anyway. make a Loom video of walking through your design, keep adding downloading these Loom videos, and at the end of the project, you have a big library of Loom videos which you can turn into a video case study. Or you can take your project notes, turn them to Twitter thread, or if they're visual, you can turn them into Dribbble post. Over time, you can turn all those Twitter threads into a blog post or a Medium case study, or you can turn those Dribbble posts into a detailed Behance case study. Later on, you can turn any of these into like a walkthrough. Just walk me through your case study and make a video out of it and put it on YouTube and Instagram. Or you can take the Behance post or Dribbble post and create an IG swipe post. And something I personally want to try is creating TikTok case study. Like, how will that look like? I have no idea, but that's a challenging thing that I want to try. So these are some critical things, but they all revolve around you taking project notes, you doing documentation. And here are some ways you can do documentation. Create a personal project-based journal. Every project has a certain amount of sheet assigned, or a new paper, or a new digital notebook assigned, where you keep storing all the notes and references, or all the in-file notes within Figma and Sketch. Or you can record Loom videos or audio recording walking through your iterations. You can start a tweet thread and continue to add to it as and when you learn. Or you can start a series of IG stories which you where you show progress and share progress about your work, and save all of them in a highlight, and later on download them and stitch them together to talk about how the overall project looked like, right? So this is how you do that bit. And that was the end of the presentation I had. And now we immediately going to move to some amazing question that I already see in the chat. And I'm just quickly going to switch to Instagram as well here. So now we're going to take the awesome questions, the awesome conversation that has been going on. Mission statement is key, and so is sticking to it. What I look at is focus on the recipes that work for you. Shifting platform is cool, but don't change the way you market your content. For sure, I think the value proposition shouldn't change, but of course you evolve according to medium. Let's say a simple thing as you have to change the format, right? 16:9 works better on YouTube versus 9:16 works better on IG. So those are very basic things, but you can also repurpose content. For example, one kind of positioning and framing may work on Instagram, but another kind of positioning and framing will work on LinkedIn. And doing these experiments constantly is also part of your personal brand. Shouldn't persona change with platform? I don't think persona and value should change with a platform, but how you do your messaging can change. For example, when I set up YouTube Live, I can do presentation, but on Instagram Live, I can't do presentations very well, at least not in the traditional format. So of course, Medium forces you to rethink everything, right? Video, you want to be shorter, you can't cover a lot of nuances that you can cover in a case study on Medium, but there are a lot of things you can show, like emotions of customers or your own emotions or some visual storytelling. So you can be true to Medium and stick to mediums that are interesting to you. I find videos and text better than anything else, so I stick to those. That's where people fail. Cross-selling one platform, people expect to see the same consistency nature of content. Yes, I completely agree with Puneet. Like again, the 80-20 rule, focus on 2 of your favorite platforms, put 80% of your energy there, and rest can just tag along. And if it's not working for you, it's not working for you. But if you really want to get what that platform has to offer, let's say Twitter can offer really spontaneous collaboration. So if that is what you're interested in and what it has to offer, then you have to sort of make that effort, right? It's an ROI based thing. Again, if you provide enough value, that platform will start working for you. If you sat and made different content for all platforms, we'll be putting more effort while return. I don't think it's about making different content. I'm talking more about trying different ideas on different platforms, right? So much so, like the kind of text I write when I'm sharing my YouTube video, or when I'm sharing a screenshot, and the kind of the text I write on LinkedIn is slightly different, right? I can use more heavy terms on like LinkedIn. LinkedIn will be a little more serious. Twitter can have jokes, can have sarcasm. So I'm talking about those subtleties, right? That is where personality starts to show through. But again, be natural. Don't try to force everything. But again, like posting the same goddamn thing on every platform is not going to work either, unless you're a big shot like Seth Godin, right? In which case, again, you build up, you focus on something like blog. Seth Godin focused heavily on blog, and now it, all sort of platforms work for him. Thank you, Saloni. Thank you, Amit. This is great. Siddhartha says, "ये आदमी YouTube को TikTok से replace कर ही देगा." Why not? Let's try. Like it, if nothing else, it will make Puneet Chawla cringe. For that, it's worth it. Aditya Srivastava asks, what should be the rough distribution between time spent on working on a project and time spent on refining it for presentation on different platforms, assuming negligible overlap between the both? I think, this is how I think about it. First, I'm thinking about almost, 50-50 time spent on documentation and the project itself. If it's a fast track project, I do not, even then I think minimum 30% time should go in documentation. It's that valuable. Now once you've documented it well, whenever, as in when you get time, you can refine that content. That's why I spoke about quick disposable mediums like Dribbble and Twitter, where you can just start a tweet thread and evolve your ideas over time. And once you're ready, then you can write the Medium case study. Once you're ready, then you can take a series of Dribbble posts and turn them into Behance case study, right? That is what an approach you can try as well. So there are platforms for raw ideas, like Stories is raw ideas platform, versus I would post on Instagram and it's ready. So I use that metric as well personally in my head. Like if it's work in progress, then keep it like a work in progress, and once it's done, right? Can you show some product designer pagers? I'm not sure about what that means. Product designer pagers. I'm not sure what that means. Could you clarify, Vishwanath? So how does one become good enough to attract other designers to your profile? Again, providing value, practicing basics. First you practice, and then your clientele or your your users will start enjoying certain thing about you or your design that just shows through. And it usually has to do with the kind of team you're working with than just an individual designer. Like there's a very popular phrase in the startup industry which says companies ship their org charts. So that's another topic, longer topic for the longer live maybe. But overall speaking, you just keep at what you keep doing what you're doing till you keep refining yourself. 1% improvement principle you can follow, and once you're good enough at every stage, people will find it valuable. And that's another thing to talk about. Like, don't be afraid to write another guide tutorial on this is a full guide, ultimate guide to buttons, ultimate guide to form design. There's thousands of them out there, but you never know, maybe your turn, your insight, your idea, the way you talk, the kind of examples you give works better for somebody else than everything today online. And if nothing else, it helps you to document your journey. 10 years later, you want to look back and laugh at your own content and go like, is this what I was saying? Like, because I look back at 10 blog posts I wrote 10 years ago, and I go like, who wrote that post? Like, what an idiot. And that's a good thing, because that means you have grown up. And I mean, people will be judging it left, right, center regardless. Purush, Paritosh Kumar, I'm guessing, how does, okay, we have taken that. Siddhant Manar says, thanks a lot, Siddharth, been following your content since a long time, and I'm actually getting to see changes when I'm applied them in life. Thank you so much, Siddhant, for applying that. And if you have a specific example, please share that with us. I'm happy to share that. Aditya Srivastava asks, does having an old outdated works hurt your personal brand, or it helps in building credibility over time? It depends on how you're present. If you don't have any new present work and all your portfolio has old work, then it can hurt as well. And if there's been no progress, in fact, that your work has been degrading in quality, then it can have repercussions, negative repercussions as well. But what I do is typically add, like, especially on my old blog posts, at the end or at the starting, there'll be a notice, hey, I wrote this like so many years ago, I made this so many years ago. So always going back to your, every year, go back, and whatever is 5 years old, you can add that notice that this I did in like this year. So keep that in mind when you're looking at this, at that case study. And also, if you have a custom portfolio, I would de-highlight those. On Behance, it's all looks the same. On Dribbble, all looks the same. But on places, if you have a custom website, or you have a, like a Webflow, or your custom made portfolio site, then de-highlight older projects that you do not want people to pay too much attention to. Saloni says, how do you share your process when it's still initially sketches and low fidelity stages? Brilliant. You share that. You share the questions you have. Hey, these are the questions I'm looking answer for. This is what we're trying out. That is the story it becomes, right? Maybe, and then the vulnerability is higher, because you don't even know whether the sketch or that wireframe will succeed or not. And that's the most brilliant part, right? And then you come back and share, hey, this failed, or this worked, right? So you can share a lot of work in progress. And I think Pablo Stanley does that well. A lot of sketches and everything he shares in progress. And a lot of designers have started to share work in progress on a lot of channels as well. Arpita, what's up, Arpita? How do you choose between quality and quantity of posts? What do you think works better? This is forever debate. Personally, I've realized there are people who can have insane quality, and then it doesn't matter whether they post once a year, that works, or people who can have insane quantity, right? Like every day a new post, and that works. Everybody else is in between and trying to balance both. So whatever works for you. Like if you're, I personally think whatever you can consistently produce and happily produce, and the kind of content that posting and interaction that makes you, again, think about it, a party, right? Like in a party, you don't want to be in a conversation that tires you out. You don't want to pretend to be a person that tires you out. So think about social media as party and the brand out there as party, right? So don't be the person, don't project to be the person that you don't want to be, because then you will start getting those kind of work and profile and people that you don't enjoy, and then it's going to be a hell ride. Like, so that is, I think, you know, is relevant. Hey Parishtosh, thank you so much. Saloni asks, most platforms are for refined work. um it's debatable, it's debatable. I mean, think about it. Like, Gulshri, starts in one video from starting to the end. It's well edited. So yeah, it's for polished work, because on TikTok you really have to be polished. The shorter the platform, you really have to be polished. But that's not true for Twitter, right? You can have an ever evolving thread. So I think that is where personal brand comes as well. What if you're known for constantly sharing work in progress projects to finalization, right? Then I know you to do that. Then I will not judge you like that, right? Versus if you always share this very polished projects, then if you share work in progress, then I'll be shocked what happened here, right? So I think you can be smart about it and change that as well. I mean, people live stream, and I want to try and live stream, like maybe redesign my personal blog or personal brand, personal website, and live stream that entire process, right? And that's completely a stream itself about work in progress. So I think there are platforms and ways to use every platform to showcase work in progress always. And the best way is to ask questions, right? Hey, what do you think about this one or that one? Why do you prefer? Do you have any experience around this? We've been trying, let's say, this kind of UI. Does it work or not? We have some questions on Instagram as well. So if you folks, I'm sorry, like I can't, I have two-sided right now. So if you can just join us on YouTube, that'll be amazing. Mehak Kothari says, if you have a custom website, how much of thumbnail picture catches one's eye, and how and why it is important? If you are putting thumbnails, then thumbnails will have to be eye-catchy, I'm guessing. But if you're putting just headlines, then that headline has to be valuable, right? And we know, like, whatever you put out there, it just has to be, headline is important, thumbnail is important for sure. I'm planning to create a portfolio of in-depth 3-4 personal projects. Already halfway done with the first one. Should I showcase it on Medium too, with an article along with the Behance? Siddhant Manat asks. And great question. If you have time, sure, on both. On Medium, it's a very different format. You can talk about nuances that you can't talk about on Behance. If I were you, I would write a long ass post, take some visual parts, create a nice visual case study for Behance, break that down into individual things and post that on Dribbble as well. And all the notes along with the visuals that together go as the full case study, I'll put that on Medium and my personal blog. And I can later on, after I see a lot of comments and interaction, later I can turn the main bullet points from that into a Twitter thread. That's why I give tactical. Like it's up to you. Like tactical things are up to you. Try different things, what works. You're visual people. Maybe you just make a trailer, right? Like Chetan, right? A design pilot. Whenever he does a case study, he realizes, like he did a splitwise case study, and he released a trailer, video trailer along with it. Like that works amazing on many platforms. Why not? Like it showcases everything you want to showcase in one go. So let's do that. And it gives you a reason to learn something like After Effects or video editing if you've been planning to get into that, or motion design, right? So if you have time, go for it. If you don't have time, remember, a shared case study, a shared portfolio is better than none. At Headout, when hiring, we have considered tweet threads. Like this is my first project, second project, third project, fourth project, fifth project. That tweet thread, a set of 8 tweets, as valid designer portfolio. That is fine. We are looking for value. But if you made a custom site, then might as well do justice to it, right? So whatever effort you want to put in, try different things, do multiple experiments. But the heart and soul of this remains, it's not that I see people suffering in not being able to share their work. They know how to share. We are designers. We know how to create good looking posts, right? But what we suffer in is how to deliver value. And the reason we suffer is we don't know what to share. And the reason we don't know that is because we don't document. So please start documenting from day zero. If there's one thing you take away from this entire presentation, is that personal brand is about delivering value, and you can deliver more value if you document your own process, your own growth, so other people can learn from your failures, your successes. And that brings us to the end of our live stream. Thank you so much for joining in. This was a lot of fun. Thank you everyone on Instagram for joining in as well. There are some interesting questions on Instagram. Maybe we can take up quick 2 questions from Instagram. Let's take them up. What consistency does one should maintain to develop a personal brand? I would say at least show up once a month wherever you are, at least once a month, in whatever format. If you can ramp that up, that's great. Why should we build a brand? Madhuri, we covered that. All right, we have covered everything. Thank you so much for joining in. Do check out my latest vlog and see how I've managed to outrage Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok in one go, and how I managed to outrage Puneet as well, so much so that he threatened to delete his YouTube account. Don't miss that video. Don't miss the past live that I did on Product Management 101. Tons of great responses there as well. And we'll do the next live coming week. Thank you so much for joining in. I hope you had a great weekend. Good night. Take care. Go Corona. And that's the end of it. Thank you.